Hello and welcome to Game Changing with me, Tim Thornton.
And me, Chris Sheldon.
In this podcast, we chat to various luminaries from the music world who we've met along the way.
About those key moments in their careers where the stars aligned and it all started to go right. If you scan the credits on the top alternative rock albums of the past 25 years, the chances are you'll start to see one name reappearing again and again. Gil Norton has produced so many records it's impossible to list them all here. A small selection of the bands Gil's worked with would include Echo and the Bunnymen, Throwing Muses, the Foo Fighters, Counting Crows, Jimmy Eat World, Feeder, Twin Atlantic, and on and on. We caught up with Gil in October of this year, 2019, and had a chat with him about his early days in Liverpool, his philosophies on recording and production, and some great stories from his days working with one of his best-known artists, the Pixies. I was thinking, when I was going to have you coming up here, I was trying to remember the first time we did stuff together, and it was the Heartthrobs.
Yeah, and that was Pete DeFreitas' sister.
Rose
from Pete from Echo and the Bunnymen.
That's right, yeah. And I dug the CD out because I was thinking, when was that? And it was 1990. So I think you probably recorded it in like 1989 or something like that.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
It was a while ago. So this basically, the whole point of this is talking about game changing, about where and when the big sort of change for you, as far as your work and people's perception of you, and that moment where people go, wait a minute. For me, it's really interesting because it's that moment before you may go on to like sort of global success, but you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like suddenly all the big things happen. And you've been beavering away, doing stuff, and then suddenly, for whatever reason, it happens. So I thought we could talk about that a bit, if that's all right. And if you could tell me a little bit, just for people who aren't familiar with you or your work, although they're probably familiar with your work, but not you as a person, just where you started.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Liverpool, so I started at a studio called Amazon Studios in Liverpool. I mean, basically I went there at about 1978.
Okay.
The first time I went into a recording studio. I was on making films, documentary. The only two things I ever wanted to do at school were to be a TV cameraman or a sound engineer. So, and then I got the opportunity to work for it was like the government, the council had set up a video team when I was like 17. And I did a year at sixth form and then decided I didn't like that and went to work on this video team. And so we had 6 cameras, which was quite a lot. This was like 77, 78. And during the day, our day job was to promote the council of Knowsley. So we used to go to different, all the different companies and interview the major players in the company. And then in the evening, we could do other things. So we used to go out and film bands and.
Amazing. Okay.
So, one of the bands I used to do. You remember Wayne Hussey from?
Of course, yeah. It was.
Mission?
He was in Dead or Alive.
But he was one of the. He just moved to Liverpool, and he was in this band. A little, it wasn't goth by any stretch of the imagination of that. So we used to do that, and we used to go off, and I did a documentary for this band Thunderboots, and we went to Amazon Studios. They were doing a demo there, so we went to film them. So it was like the whole writing process, and we were documenting that, and then went on to do a session with them in the studio. So that's the first time I went to a proper recording studio. When I left that, I went back to college to finish music. I was doing a degree in music.
You were a bass player, weren't you?
Yeah,
horn player. That's right.
Trumpet and bass. I used to play double bass.
The classic combo, trumpet and bass.
So I remember getting on the bus in Liverpool with a double bass, and everyone goes, "That's a big machine gun." That old classic.
I was going to say Liverpool double bass on the bus. Yeah.
Taunted.
Yeah.
So I sort of did that. I went back to college, and then I kept in touch with the engineer at the studio. And in the summer holiday, my vacation, he asked if I fancied coming and doing some assistant work. I went, yeah, of course, I'd love to.
It was such a incredibly buzzing scene in Liverpool at that time
Oh,
as
it was
well, in the late
crazy,
70s, early 80s.
I ran the 8-track studio.
Okay.
So I used to get a band come in at 10 o'clock, and by 6 o'clock in the evening I had to have 3 songs recorded and mixed.
Yeah.
And that was the thing.
8-track. So what was the main studio? Was the main studio 24-track?
Yeah, the big studio was 24, yeah.
Yeah. I worked there once with Ian Brody, actually, working on some demos of what became the Lightning Seeds. And I enjoyed working there. There was a guy, Pete Coleman, I think, was a house engineer there.
Yeah.
Lovely guy.
Yeah.
And I just remember an old fella who was the maintenance.
Mr. Conlon.
Yeah. He kind of ruled the place.
Patch the studio dog.
I remember him walking around with his pipe.
Oh, we had to pipe, but when I was an engineer, we weren't allowed. I still to this day can't line the machine up and take the machine.
Well, I don't have to worry about that now. But
No, but you know.
Well, you're not allowed to.
No, we weren't ever allowed to touch the machines.
Well, I had to learn to do it at Utopia.
Well, most people did.
It was it's the first thing I had to learn to do. I couldn't do it now. So we are chatting a bit about the game-changing thing, Gil. The first question I wanted to ask you was, what, in your opinion, was the record you did that made you think, I can do this? Everyone starts off and you're thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm flying by the seat of my pants here.
Totally.
You know, there's a record that you'll be doing and suddenly think, actually, I think I'm all right.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day because we were talking on the phone, and there was a few that I did. I think I mentioned China Crashers doing because I worked in the 8-track. We did a lot of demos for their first album. Then they went off to London to Redbus Studios.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
I can't remember the guys were the big producers anyway to do their album after we did these demos, and they hated it, didn't like what was going on. So we came back and we did half the album in the 8-track in Amazon.
Why do you think they didn't like it? Do you think it was because they weren't comfortable there?
Yeah, and I think they felt like they lost control over the music, or it wasn't quite. It was starting to not be as personal to them. Like it. So, but that was a good moment for me because they came back and wanted to work in the 8-track the way we've been doing things before. But that was interesting, and I think then again working in the 8-track, having Ian McCulloch come in from Echo and the Bunnymen to do some demos, and it was just me and him, and he had an acoustic, and we worked for a couple of days on songs that became Ocean Rain, and then I wasn't supposed to be doing that, and he phoned after 3 days in Paris and said, Gil, you better get over here. And I was like,
isn't that great? So,
but they were all big things. But I think the first, I think the game changer for me was possibly meeting Ivo from 4AD, Ivo Russell, and I met him in a pub in Wandsworth, and he had this tape. They'd been playing in his cassette, he'd been playing in his car. It was Throwing Muses, Kristen Hirsch and Tanya Donnelly, he was sisters. But it'd been haunting him for, 6 months. And
was this a demo?
This was the demo tape. And he decided he was going to do that, but no one had ever met the band. So I'd never met Throwing Muses. He'd never met them. We didn't know the manager. And it was such a leap of faith just to do that album. And I remember we decided we were going to do it, and I phoned Kristen up. I had a phone conversation with her. She was like amazing. It was just like I couldn't believe. She was 17 and pregnant, and I was talking to her about the songs and what they were about, and she sent me this thesis. It was like diagnostic, analytical.
Wow, of all of what they meant to her.
Yeah, totally, why they existed, and I was like, whoa. But I would just give me a cheque for like £15,000, and I got on a plane. Didn't have a work permit. Don't tell the Americans.
I'm not sure I ever had a work permit whenever I did anything.
Oh yeah, I used to. But and I just went out there and met the band, and I think that was the big thing, because then obviously after that I met the Pixies, and then I went on to do the Foo Fighters. So You know, I think that first Throwing Muses album was a game changer, and it was the first time I'd been to America.
And where did you do that in the States?
In Massachusetts.
Boston?
Yeah, well, no, it's in the countryside. It's called Longview Farm.
Oh, I know it.
It's
I've
a
been there.
residential
Yeah,
studio.
I've been there. I did a small session there once, and it's like a massive barn.
Yet the sound's really dead, though.
Yes, that's right. I know.
I remember going in there thinking, God, this is going to be amazing. And then it's like, what?
But it's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like an aircraft hangar.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no life in there.
Yeah.
And that's where you did Throwing Muses.
Yeah, but I mean, one of the things we were talking about is just techniques for that. And I think the big thing that I'd learned before that was preparation. I think preparation and pre-production are so important. When I went to America, one of the big things we did is do 2 weeks pre-production before we went to the studio, because we didn't have a big budget.
No.
The thing is now, especially these days, is that we don't have big budgets to do albums again. You know, so you can't go into a studio and waste
Half cost.
half. You know,
No, you've got to have done.
know.
Yeah, everyone's got to be fully aware of what they're doing.
Yeah. And so the cheapest way of doing that, to me, and the way I think, is to get in a room together, get all the discussions, any of the difficult conversations out the way with, and then you can move on and just concentrate in the studio. It should be about performances. And I think if people know, especially bands, you know, as a producer, you don't have to tell musicians very often why it's not good. They sort of know.
Yeah.
So it's sort of guiding them and keeping them in a good frame of mind.
Yeah.
But if they don't know what they're trying to do, you know, a confused musician is just a nightmare. I mean, the way I've done it, I started probably round about back with Ian McCulloch, I suppose, is where it started. When we went into it with an acoustic guitar into the 8-track and started writing songs for Ocean Rain. Not writing, but demoing them. And the way I do it is I normally go back to the singer and the songwriter and just have an acoustic guitar in a room, and we work on the songs, because if the arrangement's right and you know, you've got the parts and you've got a dynamic and you've got a conversation, then it's easier when the band play it in a big room, because you know, anything sounds good loud. But I think, you know, that preparation quietly beforehand is really important to me. The other thing though is if you take it, I sort of, to a certain extent, at the very start, I take the band out of the equation, because you get the way Grohl or somebody will play an acoustic guitar, you get a sense of the rhythm of the song and what you get a sense of why that song exists, really. And I think sometimes what happens when you get in a band situation, it can dilute the initial idea that why the song is there. It becomes something else. It can become a groove rather than the song or the passion. You can lose the emotion of it.
Yeah.
I like to get back to that. I like to get back to the bare bones of it and then build it up. So it's like getting the skeleton right, I suppose. If you get the foundation sorted out, then it's easier to put the meat onto it.
That's really interesting. I think that's a really interesting way of doing that. So working with the songwriter and getting exactly how they envisaged it.
Yeah. Well, getting them to reconnect, because sometimes when you've written a song, sometimes it's years ago, you know, but you've still got it and you like it, and then just to reconnect, I think, trying to reconnect into what's it about, why is it there, what was the emotion you're trying to convey. So all those things are important to me when I'm pre-production. As much as anything, it's for me to understand what I'm trying to achieve and what I'm trying to bring out from the song and the musician or the artist. What is that there? Why are we there? What are we trying to achieve? So it's a good way of getting all that ready. Because then when you go start recording, everyone's aware of what the end game is, you know.
All right, so we've talked about that now. You've kind of been answering the second question I was going to ask you, which was, what was the one that made people take notice? And you were saying it was the Throwing Muses, do you think? Or do you think it was what led on from the Throwing Muses?
Well, it's interactive, that, isn't it, really? I mean, I think that was critically acclaimed, and it was an important album for 4AD because they'd never really worked with an American band before.
Just out of interest, though, what was it that you had done, or how that said to Ivo, I'm going to trust this guy with 15 grand of my money to go off and do? What was it you'd done before?
Well, I mean, few things really, but our old friend John Reed was important because I'd done Echo and the Bunnymen and I'd done China Crisis, and I needed a manager or an agent or someone just to help me because I was still in Liverpool, so it was difficult to get any connections. And I had a friend called Pam Young, who's a really good friend with Echo and the Bunnymen. She used to work for Zoo, which was the publishing company and stuff. And she knew John and gave me an introduction. So partly was having met John Reid, he introduced me to Ivo, and we went to a pub just to say hello.
Right. And
it was mainly just I don't think at the time Ivo was thinking, I'm going to do this. I think we just went to the pub and had a chat, and I think he quite liked me and thought, I forgot anything he can do. And he had this band Throwing Muses that he was thinking about. So that's where the conversation started.
Right.
It's funny in the business, isn't it? Because the other thing I was thinking when I knew I was going to talk to you about this is how things interrelate, interact.
The connections, yeah.
Yeah, because, and I just did a talk at a university last week, and one of the things I was trying to say is that you've got to make sure everything you do is as good as you can possibly do, even if the most simple, silly things I think are important to do well. So, whether you're doing a jingle or, a jingle, it's, for me, it's pretty boring. It's only 30 seconds, but it's the same process as doing a 5-minute song. You still got to get everything set up, you've still got to get the musicians, you've got to get a performance, just even if it's 20 seconds of music.
Yeah.
Same process.
Yeah.
And the people you meet on those, like the session guy or the drummers or they could all, they've got friends. If you've done a good job, they'll say nice things about you, they'll give you some work, so it's everything you do, I think, from, if you go in with the right mentality, is equally as important, I think. And they all just feed into the river as it goes along.
I think you're absolutely right.
So,
yeah, always do your best work.
Yeah, because I remember doing this band 7 Day Diary in the 90s, who were a San Francisco band, and I really liked them. 2 girls and a couple of guys, and it was for Warner's, but it didn't really do any, didn't set the world on fire. But they were friends with Counting Crows.
Right. Okay.
And then that led on to me doing Counting Crows at some point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the same. Doing Throwing Muses. Getting back to that is important because I went to do their second album after they did the first album. They wanted me to do the second album, and I went to Boston to the beer cellar, and they put the show on for me, which is another long story actually. But they put this show on for me, and the Pixies were the support band. So, that's how I got to see the Pixies for the first time, and they just blew me away. And it was, but it wasn't, Kim wasn't even with them. She had a
really
family.
Early days.
No, she was with them, but she wasn't at the show.
Okay.
She had some family issue was happening. So it was just the guys doing.
What? No bass player at all?
No, they didn't have a bass player.
Brilliant.
But it was mind-boggling. It was just in this little dungeon, and
I remember it. Yeah.
But anyway, so getting back to your point, it's lots of things make something happen.
Yeah.
And I think it is very important just to make sure that you do whatever you're going to do well. I always think for me to produce a band, I've got to really like what they're trying to do, and B, take on the responsibility of I've got someone's career. Resting, because if I mess up, if I don't do a good job, they might not ever get another chance. It might just be the end of it. That could be the one. So you can't go into doing any project lightly. You've got to give it.
Yeah, you've got to give it 100%, haven't you?
Well, that's why, again, getting back to pre-production. This is one of the things I like about pre-production, is because sometimes when you agree to do something, until you go into a room with people, I mean, you've got a chance to reconsider, and they have, because they can sack you. You could come out if you're not on the same wavelength, and if you haven't got the same aims and goals, you're not going to do a good job. There's no way you're going to make a good record or do them justice. I've had situations where with Grant from Feeder, where we were in the middle of doing the Feeder album, and he wasn't sure whether he was liking the album. And I was like, well, let's just stop, not do it, because if we don't like it,
Yeah, we're batting our heads against the wall here, aren't
You know what I mean? If you think it should be something else, they're his songs, not mine. So, we should stop it. And we hadn't spent that much money. It was only spent, out of their budget. It wasn't like we were nearly at the end. We got through that, you know what I mean? But it was a conversation, and Grant was insecure and about why he, if that was the right direction for him, which is fair enough, and why not? As I said, but I think for me, it's important to respect the art. That's my job. I mean, I'm there to guide them through. Producing an album, it's a very emotive thing to do, and it's like it's probably the most insecure an artist gets, because they're not, when they play live, it's all like, they know what they're doing.
Well, there's also visuals and volume.
Yeah, and they know what they're doing because they've recorded it, so they know what they should do. But when you've got a new song, you don't know what it's supposed to be like, if it should be loud or what the sound should be, or, so it's quite a tense, creative time, really. And I think as a producer, you've got to be there to guide people through that and make sure that A, it's enjoyable, and B, that they feel like you're listening to them and you're bringing the best out of what they want to do and not inflicting your will upon them.
Yeah.
I think, I think you've got to guide, and you've got to, if they're making mistakes, or if you think they're making mistakes, you've got to be able to not cajole, but to guide them to the right point. But at the end of the day, it's they're not my songs.
No, it's exactly. You want to make that band be the best of that band that they can possibly be. Yeah. Here's a question I was going to ask you as well. Did you do the Pixies pretty soon after that?
Yeah, I mean, so what happened is that after that gig, they'd already they'd signed, or Ivor was just about to sign them to 4AD after that Boston gig. But they'd already gone into studio with Steve Albini at the time, so they went in to do Surfer Rosa. And when they'd finished that, I mean, Ivo rang and said he didn't think that he had the singles, and would I redo Gigantic with them. So the first thing I did with the Pixies was Gigantic and River Euphrates, and we re-recorded them for the single.
So your versions aren't on Surfer Rosa, the album,
but they
were standalone singles that came out. Right. So that was your first working with the band.
Working with the band, yeah. And then we all got on really well and liked each other, and so then I went on to do Doolittle after that. That whole Pixies thing led on to, it's always a roller coaster, isn't it? But that led on to Dave Grohl and do the Foo Fighters. So that's...
Yeah. When you were working with the Pixies and Doolittle, do you think you changed the way you worked, or did you just carry on doing the same thing that you always did, or did you tailor how you worked for it?
Because I'd already got a template for Gigantic, I sort of that was a slightly different session. So we went and rehearsed, and I can't remember exactly what I did actually to it, but I set it up to do it a different way than the single. But when I went to do Doolittle after that, I did the same thing. I went, me and Charles, I had an apartment in Boston that they put me up in, because we were in, that's where the band lived at that point. And so I had an apartment, and Charles came over to the apartment with an acoustic guitar, and we sat there for 3 days, going through all these ideas he had. And I was trying to get arrangements, and this is where, the story of, which is a true story, of Charles with the acoustic guitar, and I'm going, well, Charles, can we try doubling that bit there? That bit, that's the chorus. It's really good. Can we play that twice? And he's like looking at me and I'm like, well, why? And well, the song's actually about 1:30 at the moment, so it'd be all right if we played that twice. It wouldn't be.
Don't think we're going to upset the radio guys.
It's not gonna go in 4 minutes or anything, And this went on for a while, and so you try. And then at one point, I think he was getting a bit frustrated, and I said, should we just go and have a walk? And we walked round to Tower Records, which was right in the corner at the time, which was a big record, it's HMV of America. And we walked in there, and he brought Buddy Holly's Greatest Hits, And I said, Gil, look at this. And on the back, if you look at Buddy Holly's races, they're all about 1:30. You know, 2.5 minutes for Buddy Holly is an epic. And he was, and it was education. That was educational for me because not everything needed to be.
No.
You know, you don't have to do it 4 times. You know, it doesn't have to be a long song. It has to be concise and exciting. And I think the way it made me work with Charles is that you can't bore him, you know. So unless I had a good reason, or if I could articulate a reason to do something differently than it was. So, you know, if there wasn't a development of the song, he wasn't going to do it. It was just like, why? I'm bored. I've done that. I don't want to do it again. And it was, you know, you got verse, chorus, middle, maybe a chorus, and out. And that's...
Yeah. I don't need to sing another verse.
I don't need to do anything.
I love that. That's a very true way of working, a very honest way of working.
Well, I like that. I mean, you know, for me it's important, and it just highlights various things about that, as a producer, you know, your respect for the artist, and why you're expecting someone to do something. Why should they trust you to do something anyway? I mean, why would he want to do it twice if he doesn't? If it's not there. So, you know, we've got little strategies. So we'd make things, we'd play that once, and we'd play it twice, and then we might play it once again, and then we might play it 3 times. So it was always different, so you didn't quite know what was going to go on. He'd like that, because that would make him go, oh, you know, he's playing little tricks. But if you want to just go, there's a verse, chorus, middle, he wouldn't do that.
Not interested.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So... And for me, the other thing that was really important from that period of time, something I learned as a producer, which I don't think I've always kept to, actually, Chris, I'm a bit bad at it, but we had this thing about being portable. You know,
I remember you've spoken to me about this before, so to explain what you mean.
Well, so he wouldn't do too many overdubs, so I had to, you know, get the parts right so they could play it live. That was the portability of it. You know, so I couldn't have other things. I mean, I could have a lead guitar, rhythm guitar, bass and drums. So that's where we got the quiet, loud, dynamic. A lot was from thinking about how you make these, where you drop things out, what was big, how they played together, you know, how the drums built, what the bass was doing, you know, how to make 4 elements create a sonic landscape.
Well, the Pixies were, and obviously you by default were known for that, wasn't they? Were the originators of the quiet, loud thing, which was then the mantle taken up with bands like Nirvana and what have you.
And that was me trying to work ways of not being boring with the parts and making them play so we could play it, because it wasn't the same as the first time, was it? It was, now we're doing something else.
The godfather of quiet and loud, everyone, Gil Norton. I remember you talked to me about the portable thing, and as you explained it to me once before, it was so that you could play it in a club or on a massive stage somewhere, and it would always work.
Yeah, but the band, and they understood it, you know, they had their parts, you know. When you work in that way, it's because it makes you think about the parts, you know, what the bass and drums are doing is really important, you know, the rhythms they're playing against each other, where the guitars come in, what Joey's doing, you know, the highlights, where's the hook, who's playing that, where's, you know, Charles, if he needs to, you know, how hard he's playing things, if he needs to be open with it, if he needs to drop out, where he needs to come back in, you know, how the vocals, all the elements that makes a good song is important to do it. And you can do that in a room. Pre-production, again, it's making the songs work and making you think about how to excite an artist and keep them interested in playing.
But so also you were doing it without bringing in extra elements to the group. This was the idea, so that without resorting to, right, well, it needs some strings here or some keyboards here.
Even like flanges, you know, I mean, I did sneak them in every now and again.
When their backs were turned.
You know, but a bit of phase on the reverb of the vocal. But, you know, generally we had a you know, which I could manipulate because I could put a different distortion pedal or use a different amp. But you know, with them I started using 2 or 3 amps to get one performance, so I could have different sounds in case I changed my mind, I wanted it to be.
Right, so you would sort of
So I'd split
mute
the
or
signal.
open them as so they'd be playing all the way through.
Yeah.
But you would use them as and when you felt a little bit extra of the JC120 or
Yeah,
something.
totally. So I tended to do
Okay.
that a little bit more, which is something I've developed over the years as well.
Yeah.
Just because I might only get one performance. I mean, getting Charles to double things wasn't. wasn't.
This is a question that I always think is something I always wondered. I wonder kind of whether I did this myself in a way. When you did your, let's just say the Pixies, because that was, I would say, arguably the band that sprung you on a world audience, should we say. I mean, it led to American, obviously they're an American band, but a lot more interest from American groups and all kinds of things. I think
I remember going to it. I can't remember the A&R. Just tell you the story of when I went to it's like must have been the 2000s or something. I went to see this A&R, the A&R meeting, and the guy, I wish I could remember his name now. I walked in and I sat down and I said hello, and he started laughing. He was like,
what?
I said, well, are you okay? And he said, I'm really sorry, Gil. He said, but he said that in my mind, I thought you were going to walk in with a Stetson and lived on a fucking farm in Texas. And you come in and go, all right.
I like that.
You couldn't actually hack it at all.
So you're from Liverpool.
I know, he was like, he was literally, he was like,
That's great. Anyway, I was going to ask you, did you change your working methods after having success with like the Pixies, which you became very well known for, and your sound as well, I think, or not your sound, but the sound that you created with the group? Do you think that you used that, or did it change your working methods, thinking, this has worked really well for this band, I'm going to use this on other bands? Or do you think, or even were there bits of it that you thought?
Yeah, I think going back, probably repeating myself, but I think
Okay.
the methodology the way I go about things, I haven't really changed that much now, probably for 30 years. I think this whole pre-production, going in and get the song sorted, and then trying to get it sort of portable, trying to keep it as concise as I can, make sure. The arrangements are really important to me. I think what I am good at, if I'm good at anything, is working on arrangements with bands, making them think about what they're doing, looking at intros, looking at transitions. I always think, for me, big part of music is how you get from A to B, and in and out of things, whether it's a fill, whether it's a chord change, whether it's a dynamic, whether it's a gap, or those sort of things. I think I'm good at doing. I'm not. You're a great engineer. I wouldn't say I'm a great engineer. It's not my forte. I can engineer, but I don't.
It doesn't really interest you that
I
much, does
get
it?
bored. Well, I used to. I quite liked it when I was younger.
Because you started as an engineer, didn't you?
And I like that. It's fine, but I think the more I get into the psychology of working with the band and what their needs are, the less I'm interested in what a patch bay's doing, or if I'm supposed to line the tape machine, or all those technical things. The less I'm interested in those, because they don't. I don't want to be worrying about if something's going to crackle, if the overhead's going down on the performance. I'm listening to the performance. I'm not trying to. And I find it. Some people can do it, well. I can't. I think there are different types of producers as well. There's three, I think. There's like the engineer producer, which is basically sonic guy. There's the writer producer, and then there's a performance producer, which I think I'm more that end of things. I think I'm more about collaborating with the artist about what they're trying to achieve, and then working ways to get that to happen for them.
There's an interesting. I remember reading an article with the guy, and because his surname is just a bunch of consonants, but Bill Zimzik, which is lots of Z's and M's. He was a chap who produced Hotel California.
Oh, lovely.
And he produced Joe Walsh's solo albums and stuff like that. And he once said, he said, I can't play any instruments, but I'm a professional listener.
Yeah.
Which I thought was an interesting way of doing it. And, you know, the technical thing, personally, I find really boring as well.
Yeah.
To me, it's a means to an end.
Yeah, well, it's like driving for you. You're really good at it, though. I mean, you
Yeah, I
can
will
mix
be-
without thinking. It's a bit like driving a car.
Yeah.
You know, and all the best mixers that I've worked with, up to a point, are a great balance. I remember Bill Price.
Yeah, amazing.
I remember having a conversation with him in Wessex Studios years ago when I was doing Perubu, and he was in doing, I think he's just done Guns N' Roses or some freaking crazy thing, and he was saying, and we were talking about everything, and he was saying that he's a balance engineer. He doesn't think himself as a mixer. He referred to himself, I'm a balance engineer, and basically he'll get a balance up before he'll do anything. And I always think that's important as well, that you get the balance of what you want and then EQ that, rather than, oh, I've got the best bass drum sound. You know, who listens to a bass drum on their own? No one. You know.
Yeah, and it also, it might not be appropriate for the song.
No.
You could work for us. And I remember watching as an assistant, watching people do just that, spending half a day getting some monstrous kick drum sound.
Yeah. And then it doesn't work.
And it's just, well, it's just overpowering the music.
Yeah.
It's just a kick drum. It's, you know, it's okay, it's important, but not the be all and end all. Do you think that your methodology then, as you said, it hasn't changed in 30 years? And do you think that it was what you were doing right in the early days of starting off with McCulloch and just with the acoustic guitar and what have you, and then moving on to working with bands and doing, would you say that to get the great results that you did with, say, the Muses and with the Pixies, that everybody just went, wow, this is amazing music, who is this guy? When you subsequently went to do the records after that, whatever it may have been, Counting Crows or what have you, you didn't change anything. You just carried on exactly as you'd done before. There wasn't anything you'd thought, this is what I did on the Pixies that made such a difference, I'm going to move that on. Did you think?
I don't think it did really, Chris, if I'm honest. I think for me, it's the foundations have always got to be strong, and I think the foundations of any good production is a good song. And even to this day, you know, I'm listening to stuff on the radio sometimes where there's a piano and a vocal, and it's a great song because the song's great. So over the years, probably my principal point of starting a project is, have I got the songs? You know, I mean, if we haven't, we need to write them, or if we've got half a dozen songs, then we need to add discussion, because as I said earlier, the part of as being a producer, especially the type of producer I am, is making the artist think about what is required. And then, you know, you work with someone like Grohl any of the great writers, you know, good pop writers. They're constantly thinking about what they need, what the album is, and what is missing, what elements haven't we got, you know. And I say this to a lot of bands I work with, stuff like when we were doing Colour and Shape, we didn't have Everlong at one point, you know what I mean? That came at Christmas, that wasn't at the beginning.
Okay, so when you were, where was it, with Bearsville, wherever you were?
At Bearsville, you
didn't have that?
We didn't have that, no, we didn't do that until LA.
Okay, a Grandmaster when you were in there.
You know, so, but that's because, you know, we talked over Christmas, and but he was still constantly trying to find a missing thing, and we both knew we hadn't finished the album, and we needed to redo some of it. But my point was that he was, and you know, even when I went to do Picture Sales and Grace 10 years later, we didn't have Pretender when we started doing that album as well. You know, with Grant, with Feeder, there's been lots of songs, there have been big songs that you don't have at the start. And I think as a producer, my job is to create an environment where people can still be creative and want to be creative within that environment, so we can get those great songs. And I say this to bands as well, because especially if they're on the first album, you've got your life to write. But, you know, after that, it's, you know, you need to either have a lot of songs that you've already written, or use the time you do have to write really well, because it's very difficult. I think just being an artist, and I find it with Fran, I think the thing she gets most frustrated with is not having thinking time, space to think, just to clear your head, just to to be creative, to get yourself in the right frame of mind. And if hopefully when you're in a recording studio or in a session with me, you can get time so you're in a safe, creative environment where you want to write and want to make the best music you can and be the best you can, and not let yourself down and work hard. I think that's the end of it. The point is you have to work hard and use the time. Don't waste it, because it flies by, as we know.
Doesn't it just? Yeah. I've got a couple of other questions I was going to ask you as well, which I think could be interesting. It's kind of an odd question, but the success of a game-changing artist that you work with, or a piece of music that you make, do you think, as a producer, it can have a negative as well as a positive impact?
Well, it's an opinion, isn't it? As a poet, I mean, because one of the things I was thinking the other day, when we did Colour and Shape, I remember when the Q magazine, when the review for that came out, and it was terrible.
Was it? I don't remember.
I was just some sort of, I think we got like
a star.
No, well, I can't remember. It was like a 6 or something. You know what I mean? But he was really just non. So, but that was his opinion. You know what I mean? It was like that. Jill, I tend to take most of those things with a pinch of salt, whether it's a good review or a bad review. I tend not to take any notice of them really, because I think all you can do is just do the best work that you can and make the best album you can, and then how people perceive it or how successful it becomes. It's not really down to us at the end of the day. It could be a whole, whether the radio playing that type of music at the time, whether the band are working hard, whether they do the right press, whether it comes out the wrong time of year. There's a whole heap of things that can influence why something's successful or not.
Well, there's always going to be perhaps the guy who did the Q review was that. There's always going to be people who are like, oh look, I like the demos better. There's always going to be the people that, whatever you may have brought to the band, and everybody else seems to dig it, they hate it.
That was one of the worst things I've ever had when I did Jimmy World. Futures.
Fantastic.
And I walked into, again, Tower Records was in New York, and I walked in there, and it just come out, and they had the big stall, big shelf full of the album.
Yeah.
It was all, I was so great. Have a look, see if I got a credit. And I didn't know they were going to do this, but they put the album and the demos on the same album. And I was like, oh!
Mate, no!
I just died. I was thinking, oh my God, why would you do that?
You didn't know that was going to happen?
No. Until I went there, so the record.
That's punishing. That's punishing.
I was like, I just didn't know. You just don't know, because people are like, oh, the demos are a lot better, aren't they? You really fucked that up.
Oh, God. Yeah, Jesus. Oh, mate.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point was that it's just about, you've got to just do the best you can,
Mm-hmm.
And but I think communication's really important, and that's, harping back on to pre-production. But the other thing I love about pre-production is you have conversations. You're together. You haven't got the pressure of recording anything. You're just talking about what you're trying to achieve. And I think that's a lot of the things that can go wrong in the studio if you've discussed them in a safe pre-production environment, and you've had your rows, you've had your your
disagreements.
Your disagreements, and resolve them and going into the next stage. It stops you doing that in the studio, because that's the last place you want to lose.
No, quite right. Well, also it gives you a chance to talk about things other than music as well, and it gives you a chance to get into the headspace of the artist you're working with and what his views are on life and love and everything.
The other thing I used to do, little tip or whatever, was when I was working with a new band, I'd ask each of the drummer and the bass player and the guitarist just to do like a playlist for me, and to do a cassette, or in the old day it was a cassette, or then a CD, or now they just do a Spotify playlist, and it gives me an idea of what they like. So for the drummer, I get an idea of what drum sounds he likes. So when he talks about, I don't know, Slipknot or I don't know, whoever the Muse drum sound,
right.
I've got an idea because I don't know everything.
No, of course.
Believe it
not,
or
no.
not, Chris.
Well, you're shocking me now.
No, so it's quite nice just to have that, and I always find that really interesting because then you got conversations. So, because I remember when I was a kid and working at Amazon in the 8-track, and we were in this really, not much bigger than this really, but it was a dead room, you know, it wasn't, and trying to do drums, and the guy wanted to sound like Phil Collins, and I'm like, you're, you know, deranged here. This is not going to happen, is it? You know, but it's nice if to have reference points. You know, that you can at least you can try and get near, or you can go, well, I don't think that's going to work because of this. I always think that's the other good thing if you're a producer. If you don't like something, you've got to have because it's got to be a reason for not liking it.
Yeah.
Either because it's doing this or you've got to explain why you're trying to push for a different approach or a different dynamic. I think it's really important for people to understand. It's just not.
I just don't like it.
Yeah. So, that
shit, mate.
Yeah. What are you doing? Idiot?
Yeah. Yeah. No. Well, I think that's interesting stuff. I mean, I think when I'm mixing, quite often I'll ask for references, or bands quite often will just send them to me. They go, you know, we really like blah 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 for the vocal sound or something like that.
It's a lot easier when you've done it.
Well, sometimes, unfortunately, of course, they'll go, we really love the so and so, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, so do I. But your piece of music is nothing like it. But you have to sort of think, okay, well, what is it about that they're liking? And quite often, I'll then maybe have if I'm not with them, I'll have a Skype conversation or something like that.
Yeah.
And it will turn out to be not what you think. It will just be maybe it wasn't the reverb or the whatever. It was just they quite like the fact that they could really hear the consonants coming through or something.
Or it was buried in the background.
Something,
There's the atmosphere of it. You know?
Right, exactly. I know. Sometimes I get the most obscure things. And there was one artist I was working with, and he sent me references for how the toms should sound and how the keyboards should sound and how the guitars should sound. And these tons of things. I went, all right. And I just did it. I just mixed it and said, I went, yeah, great.
It's very difficult, though. I think sometimes, you know, trying to articulate, it's like people go, I want more blue.
Yeah,
like, well,
I know. It's like trying to describe a colour, isn't it?
But I do feel sorry for artists sometimes because they've got something in their head, and with us all, if you've got something in your head, sometimes it's very difficult to articulate what that is in a way that it means anything to us. You know what I mean? Because the way we talk about sonics is completely different than
you know, it really is.
A songwriter might talk about.
Yeah, semantics are you've got to be very careful.
Yeah, totally.
I think you're right, and I think again, harking back to your pre-production thing, I mean, I feel sorry for bands sometimes because they are sometimes basing their choice of producer or engineer or mixer or what have you on something that they think the person has been involved with or may have been involved with or what have you.
Yeah.
But sometimes they maybe haven't done their research quite enough. And it turns out that, and it's happened numerous times where somebody's and they're thinking, you're so the wrong choice. This is a terrible idea. And as you were saying earlier on, at least if you've gone in for a week into pre-production, they can go, you're a great guy, but you're not the guy for us.
Yeah, and you'll know that too, because...
Do you ever find that in the life of the album, and as you're recording it, that a certain sonic or groove or something will develop and you'll go back to one of the first tracks you've done and maybe revisit the sound of the guitars perhaps and redo things? Yeah,
it tends to happen more when we're mixing to a certain extent, that I do that, because normally it takes 2 or 3 mixes, especially on an album, to get the flow of it, and then you go, oh no, I'm there. When I'm recording, it's about the band, so a lot of the sonic is already established within the band, and I'm trying to enhance that. So in pre-production, we've already gone through what they like, tones they like, what they naturally go for. And, you know, obviously if a guitar player's going to play something, he's got a sound that he plays into. So I think that's what I mean by things evolving as well, is that I might have a preconception about what I think should happen, but just because the guy might have just got a new amp, or he might have an old amp we haven't used, or a pedal or something, that all of a sudden gives you a whole different perspective on that sonic, and leads you in a different path than you would have.
And it also means that the songs have their own individuality as well. I mean, there's nothing more dreary about putting, we've got a rhythm guitar sound, let's just do all the tracks.
Yeah. That's why I quite like combinations of amps as well, because you can get different, all of a sudden it's not like a digital, this is the sound, you know, just plug it into that preset and it's going to be that. It's, you know, it depends on where the mics are, what mics you've chosen, what the cabinet, if the cabinet's old, if it's new, you know, it all helps to the evolution of the sonic and the way the album sounds. So that's what makes it exciting for us to do, really, I think. And I think it is really important, you know, again, in pre-production, to get to know what the guitarist or the drummer or the bass player, you know, what they like, and then either buy into that or try and convince them that something else might be better than what they've got, or show them some of the things that might, you know, might spark their imagination. Really, if we was going to do the same thing every time, I think I'd be bored. I wouldn't do it. I think every time I go into a studio with a new band, you know, it's a bit like being Peter Pan, isn't it? You know, you go in with a 21-year-old band. I'm learning something. I'm stunned. They've got, oh, great, you know. And the way they do things might not be the way. I mean, I can take them back and present them with things I know work.
Yeah.
But I think the exciting thing for me as a producer is to see what they want and how they, you know, what excites them.
It's something that I've always have to tell myself, and had to tell myself as well when I was producing bands as well, is you've got to remember that, particularly with a young group, this is it for them. This is the culmination of everything. This is the most exciting time in their life. And there will be times when, you know, I mean, the classic example for me was somebody saying, you know, oh, we want to do an E-bomb. Like, okay, but we want to do it backwards. And I'm thinking, it's going to sound the same. Yeah. But you have to go through it because it's for them. It's, I mean, the worst thing in the world would be somebody to rain on their parade or just shit on their idea and go, you know, trust me, Sonny, you know, and you can't do that. Yeah.
The only thing about, I think, younger people now, the way, because we grew up we at least had the experience of seeing people. Now there's very few studios and there's very few opportunities to get a job in the studio.
Oh, it's impossible. A young lad was asking me the other day, and I was he'd written to 80 studios.
I know.
Nothing.
But there's that many studios left.
Well, I think he literally the length and breadth of the country.
But it's just so difficult to get any of those sort of experiences now. I think there's so many. I mean, I just went to Bournemouth the other day to do the BA students that just started the technology course.
Uh-huh.
You know, coming to talk about my life as if. And I was just thinking, you know, these kids are all paying like 30 grand. God knows what it is that they're gonna.
Yeah, I know. Well, I did a lecture on a similar sort of thing, and you get these young, fresh-faced guys, and they're looking at me, and you know, part of me just wants to say, be aware of what you're stepping into.
Oh, totally.
It's not like it was when you and I started, where there was a sort of a hierarchical, and there were jobs in the studios. So it's really hard now.
Yeah, but I think it was hard then, though. I still.
Well, it was hard, yeah. But there was more opportunity.
But I think there's more expectation now for the youngsters. You know, if they're spending 30 grand, they're expecting to go. When we went into a studio, we didn't know we were going to survive that day. You know, going on the wrong session and a producer that, you know, you could be out. They didn't want you in the room.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so, I think we had less expectation of what the industry was going to be for us. You know, I think it was just
I could see no further than the next cup of tea I had to make for people. I didn't know if there was going to be a career. No. I just loved being in the studio.
Yeah, totally. I remember. It nearly didn't happen at one point when I was doing Echo and the Bunnymen, and I'd done Ocean Rain, and I've got to do, it's called The Game, the next album, and The record company, the band wanted me to do it, and that was the end of that. But the record company didn't, Warner's, and I ended up doing half the album or something, and then they moved them on, and I was gutted. And I thought that was it, the game over, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
That was my big chance, and then it went. And then it's how I think sometimes with those is what you learn from that, and how resilient you get. And
you have to be able to take it on the chin. I remember you actually gave me some great advice once. I think I'd mixed something for somebody, and it had been sort of rejected. I mean, can you believe? But it had.
Silly people.
Unbelievable. And I remember you saying, "Well, you haven't done a bad job. It's just not what they're looking for."
Yeah.
And it actually made me feel a lot better, because I just thought, well, what I've done must be shit. And it's like, well, no, it isn't. It's just they're looking for something different.
Yeah.
It was a great bit of advice.
But it's expectations, isn't it? Again, it's what you were saying before. It's just what people expect. I don't think you can feel disappointed if you've done your best. I think if you know in your heart of hearts that you haven't really given it 100%, then I think then you can have regrets, or you've done a few things that you should have done differently.
Yeah. Here's pretty much my last question I'm going to ask you, and we call this the level 42 question.
Mm-hmm.
And we call it that because level 42 allegedly at some point said, it's all going really well, but we really need some hits. We really need some success now. And so they said, we are going to write some hits.
Right.
We're going to do this. We're going to, and they do like Something About You and Hot Water and all those things, and it, bam, and they very successful. They did it great, but it was a conscious decision.
Mm.
So I was going to ask you is, have you ever gone into making a record with the artist sort of engaged and fully behind your decision to make a record, a cutthroat hit record, and it's gone, I'm going to go all out on my production on this to be a hit? You know, in other words, I'm everything I'm going to do on this record is going to be with the idea of making it popular and a hit. Have you ever done that? I mean, I know it's kind of a weird question, but...
Well, it's not weird, but it's very... Because I want everything I do to be successful, I think. I remember doing this band, he was like a shoegazing band at one point, and we were having this conversation about songs and stuff, and they wanted to, you know, they wanted to keep the integrity of the band and all, you know, it was all this... like. I remember saying to them, well, why have you signed to a major label? Why don't you just make bedroom music for yourselves that you like? If you're going to sign and take someone's money, then you're in the entertainment business. And that's what we are, you know, it's what we've done. We're trying to be part of the entertainment business. You're trying to make something that people want to like and going to enhance their lives. So, you know, whether it's successful, I think that's where it gets a bit ambiguous, because who knows? I mean, if we knew, we'd have hits galore if we knew exactly what was going to be successful. And there are various reasons for that, as we discussed earlier, you know, whether the radio's not playing rock band all of a sudden. You might have a great rock song that 5 years ago would have been like a smash.
It would have been all over the radio, yeah.
You know, but they're not playing rock bands at the moment.
Well, music is fashionable, like anything else, isn't it?
So, but, you know, I've had things that I think should have done better than they have. Band of Skulls album I did, I thought it should have done better than it did do. And it all seemed to be set up right and everyone was happy, and I don't know, I still don't know. I never get to know why these things don't happen. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I've tried to do the best I can with the material. So, and I want everything to be... Yeah, I want everything to be a hit, really. But, you know,
yeah.
But again, it's getting back to that thing, you know, where we didn't have like an Everlong, which became the hit, but we did have a Monkey range. So, you know, sometimes you don't know what's going to be there. We had My Hero, you know what I mean? But Everlong actually is the one that we didn't have that I'm glad we had on that album, you know what I mean? But if I was more of a Trevor Horn type of producer, I think then do that more than I do.
Yeah.
I think I'm more about the band and about the
bringing out the best of what the band has.
What that is, and I don't want to railroad them into
a pop machine.
Yeah, I mean, but they need success because they've A, got to pay the bills for starters, and B, they've got to have a career. So,
but isn't that always one of the things of being a producer, that you've got the band's interests and you've got the record company's interests, as well as your own, and you want to be true to the group first and foremost.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know that there's some other people who've invested a great deal of money in them.
Yeah, totally.
And they kind of want to see that money back at some point, hopefully.
Oh, totally, yeah. So I still think you should do that, but I still think you could do it in a way...
Of course, you don't have to be arch about it and just say, right...
Because it's that thing about, being portable. The band, for me, being part of that portable thing is for the band to understand what they're doing and buy into it, you know what I mean? And I think if you're making them play a song or something that they don't like or don't feel... They're not going to buy into that. They wouldn't. So no matter what I did, even if I wanted them to, I don't think a lot of the artists I've worked with wouldn't have.
They wouldn't buy it.
Just wouldn't have gone there, you know. So you lead them to water.
A perfect way to end. Gil Norton, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chris. I enjoyed that.
So there we are. Our thanks to Gil for chatting to us and telling us a little bit about the early part of his career. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and don't forget to subscribe.